Welcome to UNCAGED. Today we're speaking with Daniel Rosas. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is marketing. A little bit maybe more focused on healthcare marketing and really kind of going through Daniel's illustrious career. He is a marketing executive with over 18 years of experience in leading strategic marketing initiatives for renowned brands across various industries, such as healthcare, hospitality. We were talking about Papa John's pizza just a second ago. So food and beverage, consumer goods, and pharmaceuticals. So we're going to talk a lot about marketing, a lot about some of the recent work that he's done with companies like Novant Health and others, HCA Healthcare. And then we'll also delve deeper into the past of branding and find out what Daniel's take is on the health of the marketing sector right now. But before we get there, Daniel, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Sure. So like you mentioned, I've had an opportunity to work in a variety of different industries. So from consumer packaged goods, where I worked at Coca-Cola and Pepsi, obviously not at the same time, but had the opportunity to work for both of those great organizations.
Wow.
Kellogg.
Is that normal or is that rare?
I think it's pretty rare. And I went from Coke to Pepsi. I think there has been times. So when I was at Coca-Cola, the president of North America he came from Frito-Lay. So Don Canals had come from Frito. So I think they recruited from the Frito side, not necessarily the beverage side, but yeah, pretty rare.
So a quick one on that is, so I used to work on the Pepsi brand. I used to run the Pepsi brand in Asia. Wow. And my first day on the job, I was kind of thrown in the deep end. My boss at the time, she left kind of dramatically. And so suddenly I was a young kid running this thing, and I had to have lunch with the CMO for the region for Pepsi.
Oh, wow.
And so he takes me to this restaurant, and we're sitting there, and I'm really intimidated. I must have been like 27, 28 years old. And we're chatting, we're talking, he's asking me really philosophic questions about, my view on marketing and branding. And I'm, just like, oh my God, got to be on my A game here. Right. And then the waiter came by and he said, would you like something to drink? And I turned, I went, could I have a Pepsi, please? And I remember the CMO looking at me going like, man, you almost lost your job in the first day.
Oh, man.
It's like, but nice save.
It was a good
save. Anyway, but yeah, keep on going.
Yeah, and then obviously I had a great chance to go into the healthcare side. So I worked at Johnson & Johnson on their over-the-counter medicine, now called Kenvue. Also went over to the primary care side at Pfizer. So that was leading brands like Lipitor, Chantix Smoking Cessation, Lyrica, and Toviaz for incontinence. And then more recently in hospitality and QSR. So at Papa John's and Marriott. At Marriott, if you've ever been to a convention or a large meeting, you've probably been in the Gaylord Hotel. So I led the marketing for Gaylord Hotels and Convention Center. And HCA on their Care Now side. So that was leading their urgent care marketing across the country. And then lastly with Novant Health, where I had a great opportunity to be able to lead all of marketing for demand management, both field marketing as well as brand insight and our digital marketing. So really great opportunities across numerous different industries and great organizations and companies.
And Daniel, I feel like, I loved when I worked in the agency world and on advertising. I felt at the time I was very involved in kind of the .com era, the performance marketing era, and kind of changing the way that we think about kind of buying and planning. It was a lot of fun. But today is equally exciting, right? There's so many things that are happening. And tell me a little bit about what you see that's on the mind of marketers these days.
Well, I think one of the things is just the confluence of digital and traditional marketing. So trying to get in front of consumers as you have an advancement in how you connect with consumers in the digital landscape. And it's not just digital ads, right? So it's not just placing ads in social media, but it's targeting the right consumer at the right moment to be open to your message. And how are you doing that? Influencers, you and I were talking just before the call around influencers launching their own brands. So there's other competitors, not just competitors, that are moving into the space in healthcare it's huge. Like think about Amazon moving into healthcare space, companies like Walmart that are moving into the healthcare space, using their physical footprints in order to be able to reach consumers and kind of what I call that closing that last mile of healthcare, something we use usually in the retail space when we think about how do you get your product from your warehouse or from your factory to your warehouse to the consumer's door. Healthcare is the same way. And that's where Amazon is looking at primary care. So how can they access and leverage primary care to kind of build on their overall healthcare delivery? So a lot around technology and digital interaction and confluence is really what's shaping and driving marketers these days.
Yeah, and I know, Daniel, for the last couple of years, you've been very focused on healthcare marketing. What an interesting time to have worked pre-COVID all the way through COVID and
Yeah.
then out the other end of it. I think we all went from knowing nothing about healthcare, knowing too much about healthcare, and then trying to forget everything that we knew, but as general customers. But I mean, in terms of your take on the healthcare sector and marketing of it, where are we right now? I feel like there's so many new things. One of the trends that really captured my imagination was this whole retail boom of healthcare. There's not a main street in America that doesn't seem to have a new kind of dental brand or a primary care brand of some sort. But I mean, what's shaping right now in the marketing space?
So I think it comes down to one word, convenience, right? So
Mm,
when you think about having that easy access to healthcare, one thing we learned when I was at HCA is that consumers will not go more than 5 miles when it comes to getting treatment for their healthcare. And that's specific with urgent care, but it's for any type of emergent need. So if I have sprained wrist, broken ankle, broken bone, burn, sunburn, I need to get treated immediately. And I think from a healthcare perspective, and especially from a hospital-based healthcare perspective, it's how are you making sure that that consumer is navigating to the right place, right? So you don't want them necessarily going to an emergency room, right, where you have highly critical, sometimes life-threatening situations that could be affecting the patient. Whereas you could actually redirect some of those people to an urgent care, right? Or
right.
have them have that treated need immediately and not necessarily have to wait for their primary care. I think the proliferation of specialty cares, things that you've mentioned, has also been big, right? So not
Mm,
only are you getting consumers in through what we call the front door. So if you think about healthcare as a supermarket, so our front doors are around urgent care, primary care, pediatrics for children, OBGYN for women's health. And then now, how are you connecting them downstream, right? So now, how are you connecting them to those specialty care places to be able to either provide preventive care or help them diagnose the care that they may need now or in the future? And I think that's where you're starting to see that proliferation of specialty care. And also in transparency, that's where some of the margins are, right? So when we
right.
think about driving a business at Novant Health, we are not for profit. HCA, it was a for profit. So I get great experience managing those two different types of business cycles. But at the end of the day, you're looking at how do we treat the patient and how we provide them the care that they need today to get them back to what they're enjoying in life. And those things where we're providing that convenience. So can we create an opportunity either via brick and mortar or via telehealth? Telehealth was something that got accelerated during the pandemic, where in the past, physicians felt I have to lay hands on a patient in order to be able to diagnose them, in order to be able to help them with whatever ill or illness that they might be suffering from. Telehealth got accelerated during the pandemic because we were able to work with our clinicians and with our operators to be able to say, hey, listen, these are the ways that we can actually help navigate the patient so that they don't even have to come in, right?
Yeah.
One, or if they do, then we can actually start to set up a scheduling process to be able to come through so that way they're not disrupting the flow of the rest of the patients.
I gotta say, I just love telehealth. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface there as to
Great.
what can be done. I think about 99% of the times that I go see the doctor and realize that it literally could have been done over a Zoom call. And you're just kind of like, wow, we're wasting each other's time and we're wasting insurance dollars. There's gotta be a better way.
Yep.
But I do know that there's huge kind of challenges from privacy. And, I think one of the ones that I kind of came across during COVID was I relocated to Florida
Mm-hmm.
and, I had some of my doctors in New York City. And they said, basically, bam, we can't help you. Sorry, you're kind of on your own. There's like
Yeah.
all these new rules that don't allow us to offer healthcare across state lines and all these types of things. And you're just kind of like, oh, we got to break this down. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
will we do that? How hard is it to get through all the regulations that kind of slow down that clearly, I would say, customer desire?
Yeah, I think it is a challenge. And that's the one thing that, at least at HCA, that I saw that they were approaching, right? So they have a national network for the most part, and they were starting to combine their Epic systems, their patient systems, to be able to talk to one another. So if you happen to be living in San Antonio and you move to Florida, right? All the systems talk to each other. So that way doctors can be able to access your health records easiest. And I think that's the biggest challenge. I can give you a similar story is that when we were living in Maryland, I was working at Pepsi, had a great doctor, Dr. Kiley at Johns Hopkins. Well, when we moved to Louisville with Papa John's, we would go back. We would go back. Now I had an excuse because I was visiting family in Delaware, but still, once you have that relationship with that physician that knows you, knows your need state that you're in, sometimes it's difficult for the patient to break that. But I think as we look at, especially holistically from a digital perspective, and you have organizations like an Amazon moving in, or even a Walmart that has a true national footprint
Mhm.
across the United States, even globally, I think what you're going to start to see is that push towards that integrated EHR patient records. So that way, again, if you're traveling, say you're in Florida and you're going to go visit your son, you said he was at university and you're going to visit him in school, right? And if it's
Yeah.
out of state, then that physician at that Walmart location can actually be able to treat you and access your records and not have to kind of play the guessing game or the 20 questions with you about what you might be suffering, what allergies you might have, what medicines you might be taking, et cetera.
I see what you're saying. So, in some ways, these nationwide chains will essentially start operating as a data backbone, as a privacy backbone, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and get you to the geographies that you need. That works for me. That works for me. I'm happy as a customer with that. We'll see how it plays out for everyone. But,
Yeah,
I do remember going and get my COVID shots at CVS. So there you go. So it works for everybody. But,
absolutely.
Daniel, I know that my love for marketing started when I visited Leo Burnett, the ad agency, when I was a kid, basically probably about 12 years old, with a friend of mine who his dad worked there. And I saw that they had created things like the Keebler Elves and the
Yes.
Marlboro Cowboy, and at the time the United song, which was the da, 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 da,
Mm-hmm.
da, all of that came from Burnett. And I just remember talking to this kid's dad, going like, "This is your job? Like you create these things?" And he said, "Yes." And I remember literally coming home that day going, this is definitely what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to create cool things like that.
Awesome.
And so I guess my question for you is, you're working in marketing, you work in clearly some of the most exciting areas of marketing right now that are changing dramatically. What drives that? Where did the passion come from?
Yes, I think for me, it all comes down to thinking of myself as the customer. So for the first 9 years of my professional career, I actually worked at a bank. And it was a bank with a very unique culture. Above every doorway, it would say, think of yourself as a customer. Our checks said brought to you by the customer. So very unique culture. And I think like you, we had that very early experience with Leo Burnett, which actually was my agency when I was at Kellogg. So very familiar with the Keebler
Yep.
Elves and Tony the Tiger and all the great characters that they created. But for me, it's around understanding the consumer, understanding what the consumer needs are. Another great example within the culture of this organization is in the bank, we didn't call it collections. We call it customer assistance because we were looking at trying to understand one, what was our lending decision that we made wrong when we were loaning this person money, but then also what could we have done better? How can we help this customer get back on their feet? And I think every step in my journey that I've made has really been around understanding consumer behavior more, whether it was when I left the bank to go to Home Depot to understand what motivates a consumer to use their Diners Club, their American Express, or their affinity card, right? So the card that's affiliated with their university or with a club or organization that they're a part of. Then moving over to Coca-Cola and really, really understanding what motivates consumer needs and behaviors. When you have essentially a commoditized product in beverages, in colas, how do you have that unique, distinct advantage? So that way, when you hear the bottle open and you hear the fizz of the soda being poured, you know uniquely that it is a Coke, right? Those are the things, or the iconic silhouette of the bottle. Those are the things that I aspire to. But then also, when you think about from a healthcare perspective, is how are we ensuring we're providing the need that the patient needs, not only when they need it, but helping to understand the care that they need to have before they need to have it. And that's what really motivates me from a marketing perspective is being able to develop that message in a unique and relevant way that touches and reaches that consumer to help motivate them either for their care or for the things that they enjoy and love in life.
I love that. You just made me think of the set of photos that I had to do for retail packaging for Coke's competitor, for Pepsi. And the idea was that the photos had to be refreshing, capture exactly what you talked about, which is that mental moment, that mental kind of desire to be refreshed. And I just remember literally shooting, must have been about 10,000 photos of this can of Pepsi, and constantly getting the note back from the customer, the client, it's not refreshing enough. I was like, oh God. But always interesting to find that insight. And I'd say today, what an interesting time, because the insights are coming. We have so much more data now, and so much more way of understanding that customer journey. I really love the fact that you highlighted that you're driven by kind of understanding the customer. So Daniel, I mean, where are we headed? It's an interesting one. I think that in the marketing world, when I used to spend a lot of time on it, years like next year would be very exciting, because we would say, oh, well, it's an election year and it's an Olympic year. And so that usually was a good sign for a lot of branding and marketing efforts. But tell me what you think 2024 has in store for us.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is going to be an exciting year. Also, it's going to be a challenging year, right? Especially from a marketing perspective, because those two key seminal events kind of suck a lot of the oxygen out of the room when it comes to as far as attention of viewers and trying to break through. But I think from a marketing perspective, it's a great challenge to have, because how am I leveraging my brand to be able to attach to key messages or themes that are being talked about during those timeframes, and for the positive, right? Because you want to have your brand come across and have, again, that unique connection, but in a positive way that's engaging with your consumer. And the Olympics is bringing everyone together. I can't think of any greater event than that, of uniting people together around a common goal, around sports and enjoyment, and just enjoying the life and representing your countries, which is an amazing event to happen. And obviously, from an election perspective, it's bringing the United States together, right? It's bringing a country together, and how do you tap into that emotion and that fervor? I think it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, Bud Light had done, obviously never worked on that brand, where there's two comedians that were working that brand. I think when people look at that, they say, hey, how are they tapping that zeitgeist of that moment to drive that viewer attention and drive the audience and the consumer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Daniel, that would be a great brand to have a chance to fix. Talk about a nosedive situation. But we'll see. One of my mentors in life always told me that in marketing, you run towards the fire. So you look for the brands that are the most in trouble, and those are the ones that are the most fun to work on. So I hope that we hear about you working on some pretty messed up brands in the future and saving them. But before we go, if someone wanted to reach you and learn more about what you're working on, what you're thinking about, where's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, so I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, and my handle is @DURosas, and that's DUROSAS. They can direct message me there. Also on LinkedIn, so I have an ongoing blog that I post different themes around marketing, business, and management and leadership. So if they want to reach me there as well, I'm always open to receiving any invites for speaking engagements or management consulting. So happy to reach anyone that wants to reach out to me. Has those two channels.
Excellent. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for being on the UNCAGED show today.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Daniel Rosas. We've been talking to him about the state of marketing today. Daniel's had an incredible career, really working in healthcare marketing, but really across almost every major vertical: retail, consumer packaged, etc. So we've had a lot of fun talking about everything from how to market a hospital all the way through to how to make a cola seem effervescent. So it's a really, really interesting time to work in the marketing area. And Daniel highlighted really kind of one of the key themes here, which is keeping the customer focus on your marketing. It's so true. And I see it happen with so many companies. It's very easy to forget that it's not just about kind of the P&L and balance sheet. It's about understanding that customer and designing your solution around them. Daniel, thank you so much for the time today, and we look forward to having you back.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you.
Cheers.